Nuke threats are worsening. A year later, Iran, North Korea threats worsen. Another year has passed in the world standoff with Iran and North Korea over nuclear weapons, and the situation has only gotten worse. Both countries have pressed ahead with their programs, while the United Nations has stuck to sanctions that seem to have little, if any, effect, and a whole bunch of other countries are now seen as candidates for the nuclear club. The world is worse off than a year ago, said a professor of international relations at China Foreign Affairs University in Beijing, when asked about Iran and North Korea's defiance. He said, "They will not give up." Tensions were already high a year ago. If North Korea and Iran cannot be contained, we face the real danger of a cascade of proliferation of nuclear-armed nations or states, said William Perry, President Bill Clinton's defense secretary, when the North Korea crisis first blew up in the early 1990s. Indeed, I believe that today we are clearly at the tipping point of nuclear proliferation. Under Barack Obama, Washington has sought to talk directly with both Tehran and North Korea, tactics shunned by the BUSH administration. The United Nations Security Council has approved a second package of sanctions in response to the North's nuclear defiance, and could agree on a fourth set for Iran within months. But both countries seem impervious to sanctions. Inspectors expelled. A year ago, North Korea's negotiations with the United States, Russia, China, South Korea, and Japan were stalled. But the North had at least mothballed its nuclear weapons program and was still discussing dismantling it. But since then, it has expelled International Atomic Energy Agency inspectors, restarted its atomic faculties, test-fired ballistic missiles, quit the six-party talks, and conducted its second nuclear test. U.S. Envoy Stephen Bosworth was in North Korea this week, trying to salvage the talks. He reported no commitments, just a common understanding that talks should resume. Iran, meanwhile, has moved closer to being able to develop nuclear weapons, even while insisting that its atomic program is meant solely to generate energy. Its thousands of centrifuges have produced enough enriched uranium to produce 2 nuclear weapons, compared with 1 year ago. Even though Iran maintains a stockpile, will only be used for nuclear fuel and not for weapons-grade material. It only belatedly revealed that it is building a second enrichment site and stonewalled an IAEA probe of allegations that it had experimented with making nuclear weapons. Iran has threatened to expand its enrichment program tenfold, even while rejecting an IAEA brokered plan to supply fuel for its research reactor if Iran exports most of its enriched stockpile. On Saturday, Iran's foreign minister said his country was ready for a swap of enriched uranium for nuclear fuel, the key demand of a UN-sponsored initiative to diffuse global fears over its nuclear program. But in what is almost certain to be a deal breaker. However, the minister spoke of exchanging the material in phases rather than all at once, as is called for in the United Nations plan. Such a staggered swap would leave Iran in control of enough uranium to make at least one bomb. a senior Obama administration official, said the remarks appeared to fall short of demands. The remarks were part of a string of conflicting Iranian statements that began with initial word in October that the country would accept the proposal as is, but several Iranian lawmakers later rejected the plan outright, and the ensuing volley of various Iranian responses, all by the media instead of in the form of an official answer, have strengthened the belief that Iran is simply playing for time. The United States administration has signaled willingness to hold off on further sanctions and wait out the year for Iran to signal readiness to negotiate. Russia has indicated it may support extra sanctions despite its strategic and economic interests in Iran. China, which previously opposed any new sanctions, usually follows the Kremlin's lead on Iran. Still, more talk. Neither Moscow nor Beijing is likely to go beyond the present relatively selective and symbolic sanctions. Nothing seems to have worked. In June, after the second North Korean nuclear test, the United Nations strengthened its arms embargo and authorized searches of North Korean ships on the high seas, but North Korea shows no sign of buckling. Nothing seems to have worked, said Mark Fitzpatrick, a non-proliferation expert at the London-based International Institute for Strategic Studies. The remaining options, he said, are isolation and deterrence until eventually the North Korean system will collapse. For Iran, threatening military force may be the way forward, he said. But the Israelis will not sit idly by once they decide that diplomacy has failed, warns one expert. Such threats come primarily from Israel, which has the Mideast's most formidable military arsenal, including submarines capable of carrying nuclear-tipped missiles. Fears of a regional arms race. The fear of a nuclear-armed Iran and North Korea are propelling regional arms races is also growing. Japan's advanced civilian nuclear program can easily be retooled to produce weapons should it lose faith in the U.S. nuclear umbrella. Then South Korea could follow suit. That's not good. More nuclear weapons than ever before? That's not going to work. Already, North Korea's nuclear advances have triggered reflections in Seoul, Tokyo, and other regional capitals about options that were previously considered taboo. Japan has a ready stockpile of nearly 2,000 kilograms, over 4,000 pounds of highly enriched uranium, and a well-developed missile program, so it could adopt a serious nuclear weapons posture virtually overnight. And that too is not good. Iran's neighbors to the west also are unlikely to tolerate the Islamic Republic going nuclear. Saudi Arabia, for example, has insisted that it will not accept a future in which Iran has nuclear weapons, and it does not. Egypt and Turkey could also follow in Iran's nuclear footsteps, among other countries. No, that is not a good sign. More nuclear weapons than ever before will only increase the threat of another nuclear catastrophe. And then, of course, there's Pakistan too, among many other nations that could become or are becoming more unstable or are susceptible. And again, these are more signs of the end times transition days, A real transition is happening. An ongoing, continuing process happening all around the world, day by day.